What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here at the NFL meetings at the Arizona Biltmore Hotel. A lot of action continuing today. The Vikings, among other things, getting their league financing toward their $477 million portion of the stadium project. I've been told that discussions have been ongoing, talks at least initially, about bringing a Super Bowl to the new building come 2018, 2019, 2020. That's been going on the ownership front. You also have this afternoon the competition committee making their presentation to the media, the same one that they already made to coaches, the video of how some of the rule changes that they're hoping to enact when voting comes down on Wednesday. That'll be shown this afternoon as well, and a couple of key ones in there that we'll talk about more as this week goes on. I wanted to circle back on one thing that I reported yesterday in a talk with Leslie Frazier about Antoine Winfield and his future with the Vikings. And I've had more time to think about this and to talk to different people around the league about exactly how things went down with Antoine Winfield. And here's what's interesting. So the contract numbers came in today for Matt Castle and Greg Jennings. After those two deals, the Vikings are approximately $6 million under the salary cap. Antoine Winfield's number was $7.25 million. In other words, had they made all the moves that they made last week, Antoine Winfield would have had to be cut at some point. That was going to be their fallback option. They realized that a few days before free agency opened, and that's where you can make the argument that, well, what could they have done differently? They probably could have given Antoine Winfield a 2 or 3 day heads up as they knew what was happening, as they saw the Chicago Bears get involved in the Phil Lodeholt negotiations. In terms of Greg Jennings, that also got to a level that they didn't think it was going to have to go to, including the Packers getting back involved in the bidding while Greg Jennings was in Winter Park on Friday. They didn't think they could get him for less than $9 million a year. So those two deals end up costing the Vikings more, even in terms of, even though Jennings' cap number for this year is relatively low, same thing with Lodeholt, they both got higher than the Vikings had been expected. Therefore, they knew releasing Winfield was going to have to be the move that they made. They had broached the topic of a restructure down at the NFL Scouting Combine. They did not get a favorable reaction. I still think you could have negotiated or had some sort of a discussion and perhaps put a more firm offer directly in front of Antoine Winfield to consider. But if you're Antoine Winfield and you're looking out on the open market, you're probably pretty confident that you might be able to get, not necessarily in 1 year, but perhaps a 2-year deal, get back the same money that you would have made in the last year of your deal had the Vikings not cut you. It's a difficult situation, but now Winfield going out of the market, not unlike the way that the Vikings approached things with the receivers. They made calls on Mike Wallace and Greg Jennings during the NFL's negotiating period. Mike Wallace signed 20 minutes into free agency for 5 years and $60 million. Had Greg Jennings found a similar deal and signed immediately, the Vikings were not going to make a strong pitch. They were not actively pursuing Greg Jennings, but what happened was Jennings went out, realized his market was going to be softer than he had anticipated and that he had hoped. In the end, his agent calls the Vikings. Greg Jennings comes in, has a 2-day visit, and gets a pretty decent contract from them. It could be something similar that happens with Antoine Winfield. And I've been told there has been the cooling off period, that there have continued to be talks, not necessarily between Rick Spielman and Winfield's agent, but between different people in the front office, continuing to have a dialogue. Frazier has talked directly with Antoine Winfield. I'm not saying that it's likely Antoine Winfield comes back, but if he doesn't find another contract in a pretty soft cornerback market that's worth more than, let's say, $3 million a year, I think there's a decent chance that the Vikings might come back in, because ultimately, as much as they think that Josh Robinson can play in the slot, they're optimistic that maybe even a practice squad guy like a Bobby Felder might come on. They certainly could pursue it in the draft. Antoine Winfield is still, even at age 35, probably better than any other option that they could have in that position. I just don't think you can rule it out yet, but in terms of how the Vikings approached it, the numbers and the finances go a long way toward explaining why the timeline played out the way it did. Full Vikings coverage is always at 1500ESPN.com. I will be here through Wednesday. We'll see you.